What's up, people? It's your boy Harry here, coming at you with a review of another cult horror film titled The Void. It is a Canadian indie horror movie about a bunch of people trapped inside a hospital with threats coming from outside and within. It is the passion project of Jeremy Gillespie and Stephen Kostanski, assistant art director and makeup artists respectively. The original intent behind the film stems from the former director striving to do a H.P. Lovecraft film in a way that hadn't been done before. The works of H.P. Lovecraft are, to be honest with you, something I'm still only dipping my toes into. As of May 21, I have read The Call of Cthulhu, The Nameless City, The Festival, The Dunwich Horror, and Colour Out of Space, as well as playing through Bloodborne like an obsessive maniac. What I gather from these experiences is that real horror comes from the unknown and our lack of understanding about the infinity of the cosmos. What I think makes this movie stand out amongst its contemporaries, as well as its biggest selling point, is the use of practical effects. A heavy dependence on CGI in the industry today makes the creation of horrifying monsters that much easier, but also results in a lack of novelty when one appears. The creatures that manifest in this film are all created by hand with clear inspiration from movies in the 1980s, such as John Carpenter's The Thing and David Cronenberg's The Fly. Some of these creations are truly blood-curdling, and if nothing else, this movie showcases some of the industry's finest when it comes to prosthetics, makeup, and special effects. These very designs would receive crowd-funded backing of over $82,000 on Indiegogo, no doubt from a lack of financial support from the studios. That's my pitch for the movie anyway. Check it out before continuing, as I'm now going to enter spoiler territory and begin my analysis. The film begins in an abandoned house with a triangle painted on the inside of the front door. The appearance of triangles throughout the movie seems to represent the unknown in a symbolic way. My own interpretation of their appearance is that of a warning sign. The vast majority of warning signs you'll come across on the road or in science labs will more than likely be a triangle shape. This boarded up house looks ominous enough, but the fact the very first shot of the film shows the triangle on the inside of the door seems to highlight something that would later come about at the hospital. If you leave, you get shanked. We can get even more meta about the triangle in the opening shots, because it's almost like a warning that you're about to see some horrific content and this is your last chance to turn it off and watch something else. But where's the fun in that? The only saddening part about the triangles is the numerous guys in KKK outfits. These characters left me rather disappointed in their utility and didn't make much of an impression beyond the first act. Returning to the beginning though, our two mystery men of the film, merely titled The Father and the Son, burn a woman alive. The sound of her scream gets cut off rather instantaneously. I can't hear you! But it's still a rather morbid and perplexing way to open a film. We then see a title sequence to give the film context. The music and shots portray sadly forgotten urban environments. Industry lights the way out of the darkness, but is seemingly out of reach. The characters greet each other in the hospital as though they all know each other, establishing a small town locale.
Oh. Hi.
Even the protagonist, police officer Daniel, is first seen asleep in his car, joking about how lacking in excitement his occupation is.
In the middle of a high-speed chase, so this better be important.
This very abandonment ties in with the fact the filmmakers chose to film in abandoned locations. The lower levels of the fictional hospital were filmed in a genuine abandoned one, with the upper levels filmed in a school. The building was redesigned to give it a more clinical feeling, as well as accommodating production offices and sets. For example, the rebirth scene was filmed in the school's gym. I don't doubt the 20-day shooting schedule and regular power cuts would have caused stress on everyone, perhaps filtering even into the performances of the actors. It might also explain why the film seems to close rather abruptly, but I'll elaborate on this later on. Certainly the performers picked up on the director's previous work in comedy with characters like Kim, a trainee nurse who jokes around with her patient.
You know, statistically you're more likely to die in a hospital than anywhere else.
Cool.
I think out of all the characters, she was the one I connected with most, as she is put into positions of responsibility and genuinely doesn't know how to handle them.
Kim, what are you doing?
Kim, did you hear me?
For fuck's sakes, come here.
She resents the fact she was placed in a hospital with little to no activity, and fear prevents her from living up to her expectations as a nurse. There was also a great moment when she was sitting rather enviously with the pregnant girl and her grandfather.
You're lucky your grandpa cares about you so much.
My grandpa just yells at his TV and smokes.
As though her becoming a trainee nurse was done to try and help him but couldn't change him, hence why she doesn't take her role that seriously. Unfortunately, she never gets a moment of satisfying courage to make her more memorable in the story. The horror then got ramped up to 5th gear as Nurse Beverly spontaneously started transforming into a bloodthirsty killer. I liked how quickly the film bounced into these moments of terror, giving rise to murders that are as equally shocking as they are startling. There was a great line that foreshadowed this idea previously.
I'm sorry, am I interrupting something?
No.
No.
No. I'm just gonna go make sure Bev hasn't murdered my intern. Yeah.
And this hideous murder merely acted as foreplay for the first monster that would appear on screen. Not only does the thing look great, but the sound effects are really authentic too. Seeing the only other police officer in the movie having his eyes gouged was mortifying. Another favourite moment of mine was when the father and son showed up at the hospital. It was such a chaotic standoff with 3 psychotic threats happening at once, providing an overwhelming intensity to the scene. Additionally, this girl that was ready to give birth at any second also added to this tension. As the film went on though, it became clear that some characters would be getting development, others not so much. Our protagonist Danny is supposedly stubborn like his father, who apparently was a stand-up cop. It was nice to see his descent in character develop throughout the movie, as though living up to his dad's reputation was something he resented. Promising his shotgun to 2 men he's just met and being okay with torture are great examples of this too. How he resorted to rather unethical measures just to stay alive was equally interesting. Finally, he became like the father-son characters when he chopped up his transformed wife. I initially thought that him getting stabbed multiple times and getting away unscathed to be rather convenient. When you consider, however, that he was the only character to have visions and would go down a darker path, it would seem more like he was the chosen one in a not so obvious manner. Maybe he, like Dr. Richard, would transform into something grotesque upon being placed in that bizarre pyramid realm of the unknown. Those that lack characterization include our 2 mystery men. I know that the unexplained is the point of this film and the father character, but the details of the pair's circumstances seemed too vague to make them a worthy inclusion at times. There seemed to be a contradiction between their lack of knowledge about all the weird things that are happening and how effectively they were able to kill the monsters. The father seemed to be a rather chaotic element that everyone was rather okay with having around because he was just a no-nonsense kind of guy. The father seemed to also share a vague child-losing scenario in his backstory that just led to some rather wacky acting.
This is your fault!
You could say that the father got his comeuppance for setting that girl ablaze at the beginning, but honestly, he was so underdeveloped that his death genuinely made me shrug. I think this probably comes down to the fact that the producers started with the special effects and wrote the script around them as opposed to the other way around. So it turned out that the doctor named Richard was the main orchestrator of bringing hell into this town. Ironically enough, Kenneth Welsh, who plays the doctor, previously starred in Twin Peaks as Wyndham Earle 25 years prior.
I'll see you again in 25 years.
I loved that moth analogy that he was talking about with regards to the afterlife. From seeing the scarred face of Beverly earlier, having Richard's back turned throughout the time he's talking allows the imagination to run wild. His dialogue continued into desperate nihilism as he described how a baby can be born strangled by its own umbilical cord.
The very lifeline between you and your child, constricting like a noose around its neck as it struggled to get out. Tighter and tighter until finally it couldn't struggle anymore.
It was also horrifying, and these close-ups on Nurse Allison's face also complemented this scene's uncomfortable atmosphere. The climax, though, of seeing Richard's cut-up face with the wriggling baby replaced inside Allison. Jesus Christ. Of all the disturbing shit in this film, this was definitely the worst of it. All this talk of rebirths and the rebirth of Richard's dead daughter contains most of the Lovecraftian elements in this film. Inside the slaughterhouse, we hear the sound of a baby crying in the distance, which I thought was wonderful, accompanied by all those disturbing monsters whacking their own heads on poles and that twisty guy crawling exorcist style. It was all excellent stuff. Like, That's a real human being twisting around like that. Truth be told, I didn't find the pregnant girl's smile that creepy. In fact, I found the moment she cut her grandfather's throat kinda funny. It was so spontaneously established that Dr. Richard was the father of this child that she's about to give birth to that I found it hard to take the idea seriously. I thought his final transformation into this negative Prometheus was just a bit too much as well. The white jacket outfit with skin pulled off his face was so great, and I think it was here that the movie tried to outdo itself in as many ways as possible instead of creating a satisfying ending.
I'm disappointed. All the things I've shown you, and you still don't understand.
No.
The girl then gave birth to an obese orphan of Kos, and I half love it, half can't help but feel the novelty of a gigantic prosthetic monster kinda wore off after the first one got hacked to pieces. I loved that it was carrying the corpse of its mother around, but the flames didn't seem to affect it in any significant way, and just then got killed by invisible closing walls. Kim and the son then made it out alive. I was kinda okay with the pair hugging because of all the bizarre things that had just taken place, but it was once again spontaneously established that everything was over and the movie just kind of ground to a halt before the credits rolled.
It's over.
Yes, dear audience, it is over. Nearly. I feel like the final shots of the film were nullified by the film teasing them whenever Daniel passed out. Maybe it's just the point I made earlier that he was the chosen one, but suddenly his wife was there and Dr. Richard had gone. I guess the point is that we don't have to worry about it making sense because it all looked so good. So, did it suck? This is certainly one of the best horror movies I've seen of late. This is a great experiment in bringing out the best elements of horror and pays homage to those that did so across cinema's history. The effort of the designers clearly pays off for a frightening and memorable experience. The story is where this movie kind of falls short. The characters are mixed in quality and it feels like throwing the Lovecraftian unknowable tagline into it makes it more excusable for not making a lot of sense. I think horror fans in general will enjoy this. Otherwise, I'd love to know what you think of this movie in the comments below. This video was made possible by a very generous supporter on Patreon. You too can support the channel for as little as £1 per month for early access to reviews like this one, as well as exclusive content. I give The Void a 7 out of 10. It is the passion project of Jeremy Gillespie and Stephen Kostanski. The only saddening part about the triangles is the numerous KKK guys in outfits. Fuck's sake. We then see a title sequence to give context to the It also might explain why the film seems to close rather abruptly. The father seemed to be a rather chaotic element that somehow everyone was okay with having around because he was a